what do you hope readers will gain from your book?
Um, One of the main things I want us to rethink is the success of the war on poverty, because oftentimes there has been a narrative of failure that has surrounded the war on poverty and is held up as an example of the problems with big government. I believe it was Ronald Reagan who in a State of the Union address says, "We waged war on poverty and poverty won." When we look at programs like CDGM, we know that's not true. We know that CDGM was not inherently a bad program, but we know that it was so successful in empowering some of the most marginalized members of society that it was a threat to the political status quo. So really, I hope we begin to reevaluate programs that involve the poor and programs that use the resources of the federal government to help our most marginalized citizens, because oftentimes those programs are treated as suspect, they're treated as pork barrel projects, they're treated as excess that should not exist. But we know that there's a large body of evidence to show their efficacy and to show that they are much needed programs that really help the United States to get closer to its creed, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And the answers to these questions are going to be shared on the Lifelong Learning YouTube channel for Women's History Month. So, of course, how did Duke influence your decision to be an author?
Oh, in my very first semester of undergrad, first of all, I entered Duke in August of 2001. I was in a focus program called Modern America, and this was right before 9/11. But my very first week of school, very first day of school, that Monday of my freshman year, I had the good fortune of taking a focus class with a man by the name of Raymond Gavins, Dr. Raymond Gavins, who was he had a 40-year career as a history professor at Duke. And he was someone who really nurtured my love of history. He was someone who, always encouraged me to go into the archive, always encouraged me to tell the stories of people who interested me, people who looked like me. He always encouraged me that, there were so many untold stories, especially within the discipline of African American history, that he was someone who was always, always, always encouraging me to go after whatever, intrigued me. And so this particular project, I was in grad school writing on something completely different. And I came across a speech that Senator Stennis gave on the Senate floor, and he was railing against Head Start. And he said, "This is a front for communism and beatniks." And I remember sitting in front of the microfilm reader and saying, "What could be so bad about Head Start?" I really was confused. And so I became more curious. Dr. Gavins always said, whatever you're curious about, follow the path. And so that's how I kind of began digging about this Head Start program. And it ended up being my dissertation topic and then the book. But he definitely nurtured my love of African American history and love of civil rights history in particular. And I'll say that the very last time Dr. Gavins died really unexpectedly in 2016. And it was really random. I was giving a book talk in 2016 at the Stanford Warren Library in Durham. And I hadn't even told him about the talk, but he found out and he shows up. And that was our last time together. A week later, he had a stroke. So I'm very thankful that we were able to, he was able to come to my talk. And I remember he asked me to sign his book. And I said, "I don't want to sign your book. You're my professor." No. But that was our last time together. But I'm thankful that I was able to let him know what he meant to me and to show him how this particular project really led right back to the class I took with him freshman year.
I'm glad you got to share that. Thank you he was amazing. Are there any challenges you faced while writing this book, and how did you overcome them on the way to publication?
Well, with the story, I'm a 20th century historian. And so oftentimes people that I want to write about are still living, right? The subjects are still living. I'm not a 19th century scholar. And so I would, send letters to people as I found their names in the archive. And I would, say, "Well, are you willing to talk to me?" And oftentimes either I didn't get a response at all. People would write back and say they don't remember anything at all. Or they would write back and say, they really don't think this is a topic worthy of further discussion.
Wow.
And so I would oftentimes have to explain, especially to some of these women, why I found CDGM to be so important, right? And why I thought that it was worthy of a book length study. So that was a challenge. And then also with CDGM alum, trying to see if they remembered anything at all, because most of them said, we're way too young. I don't know anything about the program. I just know I attended. So those are the challenges of trying to do oral histories, where you've actually identified people who can talk to you about their experiences, but for a variety of reasons, they don't really want to.
Just the challenges of keeping people's narratives too. Yeah. So there are questions about the book and some of what you shared. We can start there. Was there any pushback against the Head Start program during its genesis?
Well, yes. I mean, there's pushback from a variety of sources. So in the South, you saw many segregationists saying this is a backdoor way to desegregate. Because remember, by this point, 1964, the Civil Rights Act had been signed, which meant with the Powell Amendment that federal programs could not be operated on a segregated basis. So you see many school superintendents not wanting to apply for Head Start funding because they said this is a backdoor way to desegregate public education. You also see pushback from public school teachers, because remember, when Head Start is designed as a summer program, the idea was that teachers could be sent to the Bank Street School or sent to Peabody and have an intensive training program that would prepare them to lead classrooms. And many public school teachers took this as an affront, that despite them having formal training, you were bringing in community members and essentially giving them the same title when they had not done the same amount of training. So yes, there's pushback from many fronts for different reasons. But the pushback that I find the most significant was from, educational leaders who very well could have used these programs, especially in the South, where we didn't have public kindergartens. You would think school superintendents and principals would have said, this is a program that we really want to get behind. But no, there was a lot of suspicion and a lot of animosity, because they said this is going to be a way that they're going to try to force desegregation on us.